I'll try to be in tune with you guys as possible. Okay, I'm going to mute myself and then I'm going to admit everyone in. All right, good luck, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us this morning for our Facilities 23-24 Legislative Outlook. I'm Tasha Davenport, CASBO CEO, and I just really want to start by thanking you for being a part of a really important discussion that we have today on the bills and the budget affecting facilities, and just remind you of the impact that you can have by providing feedback that we can share with our legislators and really help shape the future of school business, not only for ourselves in the upcoming years, but also for the generations to come. So thank you for being here to not only take in and digest the information, but also, again, that important role of sharing back. With that, I want to turn it over to our team of professionals today, and I'll start by introducing Cherie Chenoweth. She is our Facilities Professional Council Chair, and she'll be with our legislative team here at CASBO, navigating us through all of the, again, bills and budget considerations hitting facilities. So with that, Cherie, thanks for being here today and welcome.
Thank you so much.
I'm sorry, one more thing. I had one responsibility. It was to let you all know that the session is being recorded. We will be sending that out to you afterwards. So after the session today, you'll receive that. And to also let you know to post any questions that you have in chat. We have moderators that will be picking those up at the time that makes sense with the flow of the presentation. So with that, I'll turn it over to Cherie. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Tasha. I want to first say thank you, everybody, for being here today. I am Cherie Chenoweth, and I am the coordinator for the Facilities Business Department at San Juan Unified School District. It encompasses quite a bit. I actually have the use of facilities and developer fees and fiscal and all of the procurement for public works underneath me. We run bonds and a big, huge lot of work, just like all of you. And I also would like to just say, you know, congratulations if some of you have made it through the end of the year. And I know that this is the start of our busiest season. And just again, thank you for being here, because I know that this is taking time from your day.
All right, thank you. Yes, thank you so much for being here. My name is Elizabeth Esquivel. I am the Assistant Executive Director of Government Relations here for CASBO. And prior to joining CASBO 7 years ago, I worked in the legislature, both in the Senate and the Assembly. And prior to that, I had experience working at 2 different high schools in East Oakland, helping run their college and career centers. So I'm so happy to be a part of this government relations team. I appreciate all the work that you do on an everyday basis. Again, only 7 years with CASBO, and facilities is just something that I keep digging myself into, and the more I dig myself into, the more questions that I have. So I want to believe that you all have a very, very complicated role, but thank you all for what you do, and I'll pass it over to Michelle.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Good morning, everyone. My name is Michelle. I joined CASBO November of 2022, just last year. Prior to that, I was with Assemblymember Jose Medina's office since 2017. I was also with California Immigrant Policy Center for a little bit, but then Assemblymember asked me to join him again, and I was happy to be with his team doing legislation. And, you know, I'm just really excited. Just like Elizabeth said, facilities has so many different aspects that I do look forward to discussing with you and hearing from you today. And also we're seeing trends related to climate change. So we do want to discuss those also during this presentation. So I'm just excited for us all to be here and have a robust conversation. Yeah, so let's get us started. So I can just give a little background. On June 2nd, there was House of Origin deadline in the legislature, which means all of assembly bills had to get out of their respective assembly house to go to the next step, which is Senate, and all the Senate bills had to get out of their respective house, which is Senate, to go to assembly. So all the bills that we'll be discussing today have already made it to the next step, which is the opposite house. And we're really happy for Sherry to be here also for her input, for just letting us know about what these facility bills will be doing to a lot of our schools, a lot of school districts. And also we would really appreciate your input in chat, any comments, how these will be affecting your school districts also. And I'll be monitoring that, and we'll be able to help you with any answers, or just taking notes of what your thoughts are as well.
It's interesting because I think the last couple of years, we've really only had a handful of bills that have been introduced related to facilities, maybe 1, 2, 3 at most. And we were really surprised here in the advocacy space with the influx of facility bills that have been introduced. And as Michelle mentioned, specifically related to climate change. And it's been quite the undertaking to figure out how are all these bills being introduced, what are they trying to accomplish? And also, by the way, we don't have any facilities money. So we're excited to have this conversation with you. But just to reiterate what Michelle said, right now we are in a wonderful opportunity and space to influence what the legislation that we're seeing and how that's going to continue to move forward through the legislative process. So we really want this to be as interactive, as conversational. Please, your input, your feedback, your initial thoughts, your questions is going to be so valuable throughout this presentation. So we can go ahead and move on to the first bill. So the first one that we're going to be reviewing is AB 247 by Assemblymember Meritsuchi. And just to let you all know, Assemblymember Meritsuchi is now the chair of the Assembly Education Committee. And so Assemblymember O'Donnell, who had that role and that position for the last couple of years, decided that he didn't want to do this anymore and went back to teaching. And so now we saw Assemblymember Meritsuchi taking over, and he is now going to be the one championing this facilities bond bill. So the great thing about this bill is that it's going to incorporate transitional kindergarten. So it's not just going to be kindergarten like it has in the past. So it's going to be TK through community college. And most recently, the bill was amended to incorporate $15 billion amount. And so that came from a survey that CASH was doing in terms of what is an appropriate amount. We know that the need is greater, but what is going to resonate with the voters, that's not going to be too high. And so as you may know, this bond would only become operative only if approved by the voters in 2024. And so I just threw in a little bit of information in there in terms of the fiscal impact. We're really, the fiscal impact to the state is just on the Secretary of State and how much that would cost in terms of the printing and the mailing of the bond measure should it qualify. We are very supportive of this. CASBO has been very supportive of facilities funding. We know that without a safe space and environment, it'll be difficult for students to be able to learn. And so we have always prioritized trying to get additional facilities funding. In the budget last year, in the budget of 2022, the governor and the legislature decided that they were going to have some intent language to provide $550 million for facility funding, understanding that we are expanding to transitional kindergarten. And there's going to be a need for funds related to that specific group of students. That's very different than the rest of the population. And so given the economic revenues and what we saw for this year, it looks like they are going to continue to push back that intent. So there's a $550 million shortfall that we wanted to see, but anticipated that we may not see those dollars. So we're really grateful that Meritsuchi and a various amount of stakeholders came together to say, we understand that there is a need, there has continued to be a need with the expansion of transitional kindergarten. We definitely need another bond. So with that, I will also share, we know that we had passed a bond a couple of years ago. Unfortunately, that bond ended up turning into Proposition 13, and for the reasons that Proposition 13 has historically, it did not pass. And so here we are again, trying this out for another time. And the counterpart to AB 247 is SB 28. So we have an assembly bill has been introduced, and we also have a Senate bill, and this one's by Senator Glazier. The biggest difference between the 247 Maritsuchi bill and this Senate bill is that this Senate bill is incorporating higher education. So this one would be $15.5 billion, but it would also incorporate the University of California and the California State University campuses. And the breakdown here is that $6 billion would go to higher education, $2 billion specifically for community colleges of that, and then $9 billion would go for K through 12. And as you see here, even that in itself has a breakdown. So 5.2 billion would be earmarked for renovation, with 150 million specifically going to testing and reducing lead, 2.8 billion for new construction, 500 million for charter schools, 500 million for CTE facilities, 250 for mental health and wellness centers, and 250 million for the school stadium lighting projects. There is that big difference between the Assembly bill and the Senate bill, that higher education. And the reason why CASBO took a watch position on this is because we know historically, based on polling, it doesn't do well when we incorporate higher education. So it's not like we're opposing this bill. We're just very supportive of the Assembly bill for the fact that it's focused on TK through community colleges.
Yeah, and typically when you see something like this, and you see the higher education along with this, you will see that these don't pass. They struggle to actually pass through because the higher education is mixed into it, and voters just don't pass these kind of things. We even currently in our district, because we do have education with the community colleges around us, they'll even ask us if we're going to go for bonds, and they don't want to go for bonds at the same time that we go for a bond because of that threat that they will not be able to pass a bond when we're actually doing it through the K through 12 system.
And then I'll just add to that. It'll be interesting. I mean, the Assembly has their version of the bond. The Senate has their version of the bond. As Michelle said, now they're crossing over to each other's houses. And what happened a couple of years ago with AB 48 is that there was a power struggle, and there was negotiations that had to take place on, are we going to compromise on having higher ed or are we not? And so we'll be keeping an eye out and continue to be a part of the conversations when it comes to the bills crossing over and what type of negotiations will or will not take place. So more to come on that. So the next bill, CASBO has an opposed unless amended position. Essentially, this bill is focusing on lead testing, very similar to a bill that Lorena Gonzalez had a couple of years ago. But for this specifically, it would say that on or before January 1st, 2027, it would require a community water system that serves a school site receiving Title I funds to test for lead in each of the school site's potable water system outlets, and then report those results to the State Water Resource Control Board and the applicable school and/or LEA. And it also requires the LEAs or schools, if the lead water exceeds the 5 parts per billion, to perform specified actions, essentially taking whatever action they can to accommodate for that, and then requires the state board to allocate funds for these purposes. And so the bill was recently amended to focus on just Title I school sites. We know that there is a concern around the funding for this bill. I think for CASBO and our legislative committee, which is the one that takes positions on legislation, It's not that we don't care about wanting to test water. That's definitely important and it's a priority. However, the concern really is there enough money? Is there enough funding? And so there are federal funds right now that are available. There's $40 million. And so what they're trying to say is that within the $40 million that we currently have through the drinking water state revolving fund, that would be over a 4-year period. And so we wonder, is that really going to be enough? And so as we were having conversations with the author's office, they decided, well, let's narrow the scope of the bill to just have it be Title I school sites and not every school site like the bill had originally been introduced. And so it's interesting because you wonder if you're now just focusing on Title I school sites, is that going to be equitable? Is that going to be practical? Because in some of my initial conversations with other members, they said, well, it's not like we can just have the community water system test one school site and not test another school site. I could totally hear parents coming to school board meetings saying this is unfair, where's the equity in this? And again, any thoughts, any feedback? Do those comments resonate with you? Having this conversation with the author's office and the staff, I mentioned that to them. And they said, well, do you want the community water systems to test all the schools? And I'm like, no, I'm not trying to say that specifically, but the concern again is there going to be enough funding within what we have in this federal drinking water state revolving fund? And then Michelle, I mean, we took a look at how many title school sites we had.
Yes, so we were looking at how many Title I schools, and currently there are 7,300 Title I schools. And even if only about half of them were tested, that's $8,000 available just for testing. So, just funding again is a big part of it. And I know Sherry, also you had some really good input in regards of this.
Yeah. So, and also, in each year right now, we're increasing in Title I schools. So, I was just at a school site the other day, and that site this year is not Title I, but next year it will be Title I. And every year in our district, we're adding more and more schools. The refugees coming into California, just those kind of things, those are bringing us into the Title I area. And the other thing that we said is that, we've worked so hard to have everything be equal, right? Have that equitable thing. And now we have a legislation that's coming out and saying, okay, well, we're not going to worry about that component. And I think that it's a mixed message. And so are we or are we not? And I can just see, we're 78 square miles and different demographics, and we're choosing one school over the other. I just don't see how that's going to favor with the families and the community.
The most recent amendments that came out of the Appropriations Committee, I found to be like, okay, this is not necessarily the penalty, but here are the teeth to this bill. And it says that if an LEA refuses to allow the community water system to access a school site or fails to respond to the second notice, then the community water system will now need to notify the state board for being non-compliant. So there are repercussions to this in the recent amendments that came out.
And then the other thing that I see a problem with some of that is that when are they trying to come out to your site? Are they trying to come out during school hours when we're trying to lock up and have one point of entry and make sure we know who's on our sites so that way students and people can feel safe? Is that being flexible, or are we going to be penalized for that? So I think that that's also another topic. Are they doing it after hours? Are these people badged? Who is it that's coming on our sites to make everybody feel safe?
Yeah, thank you. That's definitely a great point. And I guess moving on, another one that CASBO has a concern on, more specifically, we've taken an opposed position, is on a school extreme heat action plan. And so this plan would require all school sites, this also includes childcare facilities, the next time they do outdoor surfaces or resurface or replace other high specific heat surfaces. And they provide the examples of cool pavement technologies, natural grass, shrubs, trees. It would require them to resurface these spaces by January 1st, 2027, but there needs to be a plan by January 1st, 2025. And so this is a little concerning in that there's just a lot of questions to be had. What is the ask here? You want to require all school sites and childcare facilities to resurface or replace these heat surfaces. What exactly does that mean? What does resurface mean? We are in conversations with the committee consultants right now. The good thing is that when the bill came out of the appropriations committee, that it makes a contingent upon an appropriation by the legislature. So CASBO, if you don't already know, doesn't like unfunded mandates. And so when there are recommendations coming out from the appropriations committee, which is really the fiscal committee that takes a look at how much this is going to cost to implement, and they're saying, hey, this might cost some money, we don't have money for it right now, let's make it contingent upon an appropriation. And so even then, the Committee on Appropriations in the Senate still said that, hey, this could still really cost in the low to mid hundreds of millions of dollars. But I think overall here is how easy or how difficult would it be to accommodate to this bill should it become law. There's still a lot of questions to be asked around this. And I don't know, Cherie, did you want to make a few comments around just like,
Yeah.
what's this bill trying to do? Why are we trying to do?
Yeah, so some of the things is, are we only talking about play area? And are we thinking about, are they asking for bark? Well, what about our students with ADA issues? Are we thinking about that? Are we thinking about animals that use that area for a bathroom? And it's hard to, we're getting away from bark just for those reasons. So it can be accessible for all students and also cleaned and be able to be, seen. When you do bark, you can't see that kind of stuff. So what is it that they're asking for? I think that there just needs to be a lot more information involved in this to tell us, areas, what are you asking for? What kind of surfacing? And then I do believe in, you got to have some money. Not all schools can afford this. This is not something that they can afford or put into their budgets.
And I think this is also another example of a one size does not fit all. We have certain areas that, do you really need to replace or resurface in spaces that don't get very hot? There's just a lot of concerns around this. There are some school districts already that have some heat plans in place because it makes sense for the areas that they live in. How would this bill, should it be implemented, impact what they're currently doing? But the other part of this is that it would require CDE to consult with the Department of Social Services to develop a template and then create a model program guidebook for school districts on how to approach this. But again, it's a one size fits all approach that doesn't necessarily make sense for all the school districts and the school sites, depending on the geographical area. Any thoughts, input, feedback, please send it our way. This is one that, again, we do have an opposed position. We're working very closely with other organizations because it really causes us some heartburn.
Yeah, and some of the other things that I have thought about is the stadiums, those kind of things. What kind of products are you using in your stadiums, especially for the turfs and those kind of things? So what are they asking? I think that there's just a whole lot of information that's really needed for this one.
Thank you.
Oh, we do have a comment in chat really quickly that I want to just bring up to our attention. Natural bulbs SB499. Oh, yes, a few more comments. Natural gas shrubs and trees would require more, yes, more water, definitely. And then in our area, we are restricted to more desert landscape. Okay, all right.
Yeah, no, absolutely no. Please keep them all coming. Please keep them coming because that we're hearing it's like, hey, we're already accommodating for certain plans because there's a drought. So why would we have to? How is this going to impact us? We're in a drought. We're already in this plan. Yeah, it's interesting. I actually was having a conversation with Cherie earlier about just the wood chips, and I'm putting on my mom hat right now. I have a 5-year-old in a TK school, and he is and I'd rather have him maybe fall on wood chips rather than cement or other harder surfaces, but he likes to jump off of the playground space, and he's getting all cut up with all these wood chips. And then you think about, some areas where you do have wood chips can attract unwanted animals, and the wood chips, they get wet, they fly away, you constantly have to replace them. And so I don't think that there's a full understanding that you can just say, hey, if you're going to do this playground, let's go ahead and just throw in some wood chips. It's not that easy. It doesn't always work.
Yeah. Also, the storms that we've had, like they get wet, and do you replace them? Do you wait for them to get dry? So just not all size fits, just not one size fits all. Definitely.
Yes. Any other comments, please send them to us, write them in the chat. We can definitely use that information.
Yeah. All right, so I can take us to SB 532 by Senator Weiner. This is one of the bills that CASBO is happy to support. This bill is just asking for more clarification and transparency. We're asking for there to be more language about clarifying why bonds and taxes are necessary, especially for our local communities, in just voter guide. Right now, there's a limit of 75 words in just a voter ballot, but this would expand on why these taxes and bonds are needed, how they will be helpful, what's the rate of this tax, who will these taxes and bonds affect. So, just about transparency, and CASBO is supporting it because if there's any confusion in this language, voters tend to stray away, and that can cause just a lot of detrimental issues to our local community, for hospitals, schools. So we're really appreciative of Senator Weiner for having this bill. They've only had technical amendments so far, just about how words can fit on one page versus on the ballot measure versus the voter guide, and fiscal impact is just about $133,000 to $128,000 annually, just for the paper and the cost of the ballot measures.
So those were the main bills that we wanted to have a conversation around, specifically because CASBO's legislative committee has reviewed them, has taken a position on them, and we're actively working on it. We also wanted to make sure that we brought some additional information your way related to other facility bills that you should be aware of. So these bills, we are aware of them. We're in conversations. It's just that CASBO hasn't necessarily taken formal positions on these. And so the ones that you see slanted here or italicized have to do with the climate resilient type of legislation being introduced. So the first one is SB 394 by Senator Gonzalez. Essentially, this bill would require the Energy Commission to convene a group of agencies and stakeholders to develop a master plan specifically for healthy, sustainable, and climate resilient schools. However, that would be done upon an appropriation by the legislature. But this is a little bit more high level. They're saying, let's develop a plan. They're not actually requiring, they're not mandating. So this is a better one that we see here moving forward. The next one is SB 515. It has to do with school facilities shade structure. This bill is sponsored by LEUSD, and it exempts the installation of shade structures on the division of the state architect. So DSA's approved pre-check design list from requiring LEAs to also provide an accessible path of travel under the California Building Standards Code. The next one I'd move on to is SB 760 by Senator Newman that has to do with all gender restrooms. This one was actually sponsored by the State Superintendent of Public Instruction, and it requires that on or before July 1st, that every LEA, including a county office of education and a charter school, that maintains a combination of class from kindergarten to 12th grade, they would need to provide at least one all-gender restroom for a student to use at each of its school sites. And so this is one that was important for the superintendent. He did have a task force related to this. We know that with a lot of LGBTQ plus comments that are being made in some board meetings, they're really the legislature is very supportive of trying to provide a safe space for students to be able to use a restroom. So that one has been moving through the legislative process pretty easily. If there are any, concerns or any implementation challenges or barriers that you may see with this bill, we would be more than happy to take those comments in so we can have those conversations. At this point right now, we don't have a formal position on the bill. We were made aware prior to the bill being introduced and we're able to have initial conversations. But if there's anything else that you all see that can be addressed to help implement this in a better manner, we are more than happy to take those comments and that information from you. And on the assembly side, we have AB 230 by Assemblymember Reyes. That has to do with menstrual products. As we know from earlier, a couple of years ago, that this would have there was a bill that passed that would require menstrual products to be provided at the bathrooms in school sites. And so what this bill really just does is that it expands that requirement for students, or that requirement for school serving students in 6 through 12 to now provide those products for those students that are in 3rd to 5th. So essentially when the bill was introduced, it said you need to provide them for students that are in 6 through 12. Now we are seeing this bill this year that says, hey, we need to reduce that down to 3rd grade. I was actually in the Assembly Education Committee hearing when Assemblymember Reyes was presenting her bill, and she had a couple of students that were there testifying. And I think the rationale behind this is that there are students that are experiencing this earlier and earlier in age. And it seems like Assemblymember Reyes wants to be a little more inclusive to say, hey, there are younger kids that are needing these products. So let's move it from 6th grade down to 3rd grade. And that one's no opposition, flying through. I would expect for that to continue moving forward, for it to get signed, and for it to become a requirement. On AB 384 by Assemblymember Calderon, that has to do with another school facilities recommending interior temperatures inventory of heating and cooling systems. So here's another one, like, what are you trying to do here? Specifically, this one would require CDE to conduct a study on recommended indoor air temperature ranges and temperature control standards for public schools, and include a representative sample inventory of heating and cooling systems and interventions in public schools. They also would require CDE to develop policy recommendations for safe indoor air temperature standards. And so this one, again, it puts a little bit more of the burden on CDE to say, hey, CDE, can you look into this? Can you create an inventory? Can you take a look at some recommendations for schools? but this is again another example of a climate type of facilities bill. On AB 439 by Assemblymember Wendy Carrillo, this one has to do specifically just with LAUSD. It's a LAUSD sponsored bill. Wanted just to throw that on there. It extends the pilot program that authorizes LAUSD to award multiple annual task order procurement contracts for the purposes that include services, repairs, and construction until 2034. And so for anyone that is part of LAUSD, again, this is a LAUSD specific bill that extends the existing pilot program for those purposes up until January 1st, 2034. And then the last one I actually wanted to highlight is AB 1642 by Assemblymember Gibson. This is a master plan for green schoolyards. Essentially, we're highlighting this because with all of the different bills that we're seeing related to climate change, it's a lot of patchwork, whether they be recommendations that the Energy Commission has to provide, whether it's the Department of Education that provides recommendations and a guidebook with the Department of Social Services. I mean, there's just a lot of different patchworks of how to address climate change in facilities. And so we are working with a group of different organizations and LEAs to just say, hey, can we just focus on one thing right now? Please don't create any mandates. We don't have any money. We agree that maybe it would be good to have some sort of master plan should school districts want to continue to move in that direction. And this really has become a vehicle and an avenue to move forward. So on this one, it would specifically require CDE and the Natural Resources Agency to facilitate an interagency and stakeholder engagement process, specifically to develop recommendations for a master plan. And they would need to do that by December 1st, 2024. Again, very, very high level, very broad, and it would incorporate the appropriate stakeholder, and it would incorporate an engagement process. So that one seems to be, again, an avenue for all of the patchwork bills that we're seeing, including the mandated ones. And so that concludes our facility bills portion. What I also wanted to, and what we wanted to as part of CASBO, is incorporate some, just a couple of bills that impact budget and finance. So these are things that we think will be important to just keep in mind, regardless of which discipline you work in specifically. And the first one I'll go ahead and start with is AB 721. This was specific to county offices of education. So it would allow COEs to publish their district budget meeting notices to either a website, a newspaper, or both. So currently they have to do it through a newspaper. And if you're a big county, you have to make sure that you do it through a newspaper in every district that you represent. And so some of our CASBO folks were just saying, this is timely. This is, we have to pay for this. It just seems very outdated. And so the CASBO has taken a support position. The Orange County Office of Education is a sponsor of the bill. We were able to help support them in terms of leading the testimony. But again, this is County Offices of Education. To the contrary, the fiscal impact here is that there would actually be cost savings. And that's not something you see on a regular basis. And so right now the bill is pending a hearing date in the Senate Education Committee. The next one is going to be AB 938 by Assemblymember Maritsuchi. Again, this one is, he is the chair of the Assembly Education Committee. And if you hadn't heard rumblings already through either EdSource or through other avenues, when this bill was introduced, it was seen as increasing the inspirational targets for the LCFF and the base grants. However, any of that additional funding would need to go towards increasing staff salary wages by 50%. And so that would have to, the funding, the funding levels wouldn't be anytime soon, but they would be for 2030, 2031. We as CASBO have historically taken support positions on increasing the LCFF or working towards aspirational targets. This one was a little bit different because it tied the threshold to increasing staff salary wages by 50%. And so even though that bill or that information was part of intent language, which means it's not part of the actual statute, it's still part of the bill and it still provides an intent. And so CASBO was able to work with the committee consultants, specifically a few of our legislative committee members, not just on the confusion of the 50% reference to the threshold, but also on what does this mean for basic aid districts? What does this mean when it comes to employee salaries? Is that incorporating health and benefits? Is that including pension? So we were able to get our amendments that we had requested through, and so the bill was amended. However, we have a supportive amended position. The author took all the amendments that we were asking. I think right now we're just waiting on an error that took place. So there is still in the bill, if you look at it right now, one reference to the 50% wage. And so once that gets removed, CASBO will be moving to a support position. But again, historically, we've had supported increases to the LCFF base grant and aspirational targets. We know that we're not going to get there right now, but we're starting those conversations over again to that if and when we can, we will try to increase our base grant. I believe the last one that I have on here has to do with changing our ADA funding to enrollment-based funding. So this is SB 98 by Senator Portantino. He attempted this bill last year. This was sponsored and continues to be sponsored by LAUSD. And so it would literally just change, well, not literally, but what they're trying to say is instead of getting funded on an ADA basis, we would be funded on enrollment days. And the big piece here is that you're not just switching from ADA to enrollment based, but when you switch over from enrollment based, 30% of the funding you would get would have to be targeted specifically for chronic absenteeism. And so that is a pretty big chunk of money that would then be targeted for those specific purposes. So as you probably know, there's only one pie. And if you are experiencing high chronic absenteeism, you're down here. But if you are doing okay on that money that you would be getting for here is now going to go down to here. And so for us, we do have an opposed position on this bill, and it's not necessarily that we're opposed to an enrollment-based funding. It's just how are we supposed to just make that switch over? There's so many other policy changes that would need to be made because ADA is tied to so many different things. But just so that you all are aware, this bill has been tried. It's being tried again. We don't know how this would take place. We think the opportunity passed because CDE is saying that this bill would result in $3.6 billion each year. And we're talking about $3.6 billion to make us even. That's not, giving us an additional, giving everyone money or making everyone win. This is how much it would take for us to break even in order to make this switch. And so wanted just to make sure that you all knew this information was out there. And I think that's the last of our bills, if I'm correct. Yeah, there we go. That concludes all the bills that we wanted to present. I don't know, Cherie, Michelle, if anyone has any comments, questions.
No, I just want to thank everybody for their time today and being here. Again, I know it's year end and school's ending and we're ramping up.
Yes, thank you so much everyone for being here. We really appreciate you being here. and the comments that we've been seeing in chat. I'm taking note. We will be sharing this with other organizations also. So we really appreciate you being here.
And as a reminder, we will be emailing out the PowerPoint presentation. Please contact us for additional information, feedback, if you want to be of any help in any of the bills that we have had conversations on. Thank you all for being here.